So in the last month, we have received a few major updates that have truly had a pretty big effect on the Oldschool Runescape economy, from Araxxor to the Summer Summit, and honestly some unexplained things as well. There's a lot to cover this month. Starting with probably the most interesting price increase that I've seen this year, and that is the granite maul. Look at this thing, it actually peaked at 600k in September. That's insane. Like, I literally thought these were still alch value, so PSA, don't alch your G-mauls anymore. They've never been this expensive, not even close. And they were pretty much alch value until 2020. But still, even though there's a granite maul sink, it's kind of impressive that they've gone up this much. Just to put in perspective, the profitability of gargoyles has gone from about 500k an hour to like 900k per hour just due to the price of the G-maul. And even if we look at the amount traded, it's actually increased as well, so it's just pretty interesting. Again, best guess is just there aren't any bots here anymore. I mean, I haven't personally looked, but I would just have to guess less bots, but it's still kind of crazy to me it's gone up this much. That seems kind of weird. But it's not just the granite maul, other heavily botted items have increased so much lately. Zulrah scales are, I think, at an all-time high, or nearly. Okay, not quite. 250 GP is such a big increase though. They were 89 GP a year ago, so have over doubled in price since then. And when Zulrah scales increase, so do the uniques as well. The toxic blowpipe went up to as far as 5.5 mil this month, and the exact same thing with the uncharged trident and the serp helm. So now Zulrah is pretty handily about 5 mil per hour if you have pretty good gear, so it's kind of the money snake once again. Okay, another interesting one is blood runes. Blood runes have also gone up a lot, specifically this month, going from 240 up to 317. This is notable because for quite a while they were at their floor price of about 200 GP. It can't go any lower because people will just sell them to a shop for 200 GP. Historically, blood runes have kind of fluctuated up and down, but for pretty much all of 2023 they'd hit their floor, mainly because of Guardians of the Rift that was released sometime in 2022, I think. But if we look at the amount traded, it's gone up dramatically, but the price has started to climb upwards and now rapidly as well. Now it's probably due to the increased demand that the scythe is creating, thanks to content like the Colosseum, Araxxor, Duke. There's a lot of new content recently where the scythe is best in slot, and the scythe absolutely eats up blood runes. So considering how many bonus blood runes are created by the Raiments of the Eye skilling set, it's impressive that they have actually started to go up again. Now let's talk a little bit about the new boss, Araxxor. Araxxor had a pretty big effect on a number of items, but firstly there are 3 new ones that it introduced. The Amulet of Rancor, the Arania boots, and the Noxious Halberd. Starting with the Amulet of Rancor, it quickly stabilized at around 90 mil, and has stayed remarkably consistent since then. Actually, one of the first times ever I've seen an item hit its floor in the first day and remain pretty much at that exact price point. The Arania boots are actually dropped from the Arax sites, so they're not even dropped from the boss, and they have dropped all the way to 15 mil. But considering it is a Slayer drop that people can cannon, still remarkably high, I would say, in my opinion. And finally here we have the Noxious Halberd, which dropped pretty quickly to about 20-ish mil. Now I think the Noxious Halberd was a little bit underrated on release. It's just a pretty solid slash weapon, but the price of an item is dictated by not only the power of the item, but also the availability. I mean, it is a Slayer boss, tons of people are killing Araxxor, so regardless of how strong the weapon is, if it's too common, it's going to drop in price. Look at the Fang. The Fang is so strong, but it is 12 mil right now. Now the Amulet of Torture, which is required to make the Amulet of Rancor, has barely changed in price at all, which is not too surprising. The Zenates are pretty stable. But interestingly, an item that has dropped a lot is the Torture Ornament Kit. This thing has gone down so much. It's gone from 3 mil down to 600k in the last month and a half. Kind of interesting, although this is a cosmetic item, it actually does have some functional use because by making your amulet an ornament version of it, it makes it untradeable, which helps reduce your death costs. So it actually did have some function. Now that most people are using the Amulet of Rancor, you don't need this anymore, so everyone sold it off. Now, probably the biggest weapon increase by price has to be the Abyssal Bludgeon. This thing went from 20 mil up to 40 mil pretty much immediately, doubling in price. And if you look at it a year ago, the Bludgeon was only 9 mil, and that was 40 mil, mostly thanks to Araxxor right now. Now the scythe has also gone up a fair bit the last couple of months, and partially due to Araxxor, but also just due to the profitability of some of the content where it's best in slot at, like the Colosseum, Theater of Blood. And now that it actually has quite a few use cases, it's now approaching the most expensive mega rare that we have. It has long since overtaken the Shadow, which is down to about 1.2 bill now. I wouldn't be that surprised if by 2025 the Scythe was the most expensive mega rare. Now there were a few other winners from the Araxxor release. The Heavy Ballista is kind of out of nowhere. It jumped up from 900k to 2 mil, mostly due to the fact that as part of the Araxxor fight, you need a heavy ammunition weapon, and the Heavy Ballista can one-shot the smaller Araxxites, which is very helpful. Also, the Elder Maul was quite heavily used, and that jumped up from 100 mil to 140 mil. Another example I forgot about, Burning Claws. These things went from 14 mil to 30 mil from Araxxor. It looks like it's not maybe the most desired weapon now, but still bumped it up by double just on the release. Kind of crazy. Okay, it's time for a random item check-in, and this month's item is the Mithril Seeds, and for some reason these have gone up so much in the last couple of months. In September they went as high as 4k each, which is kind of insane considering that Mithril Seeds would normally hover around a few hundred GP. Why have they gone up 10 times in value? I'm honestly not 100% sure. There's only really one consistent way to get these, and that's from the Legends Guild shop, but there does seem to be increased demand for the Mithril Seed, and there's not really any other way to get it besides one shop, so it's kind of bottlenecking the entire supply chain. But hey, just by completing Waterfall Quest, you now get almost 100k, so now that quest is even more juiced because you get the best combat experience and a decent amount of starting monies. Okay, so it's time to talk about the Summer Summit. Now, they announced a ton of new things coming to Old School, but there's one kind of controversial update that they announced, and that is Wrathmaw. And during the Wrathmaw announcement, they revealed that 4 items would be receiving a upgraded variant, that being the Malediction Ward, the Odium Ward, the Dark Bow, and the AGS. And of course, just by being mentioned, these items jumped up a lot. The Malediction Ward went from 2 mil up to about 4 mil, so doubling in price. The Odium Ward went up a similar amount, going from 3.7 mil up to about 6 mil. The Dark Bow jumped up 3 times in value, going from about 800k to 2.5 mil at its peak. And the Armadyl Godsword also jumped up a lot, going from around 11 mil up to 17 mil. However, because of how controversial the proposed update is, it didn't pass the initial poll. While they are still reworking it, and there might be some hope of these upgrades still making it into the game, it's very tenuous right now. So for the most part, the prices have started to drop back down again, because I think the expectation is this content won't come to Old School. Now, one thing that is coming to Old School and very soon is Varlamore Part 2, and with it we're getting one pretty notable PvM encounter, the Huicatl, which is going to be a draconic boss that can be killed in a group. Now, there's not too much more known about it than that, but because of course it is a dragon, the 2 Dragon Hunter weapons have started to increase quite a lot. The Dragon Hunter crossbow seems to be going up a bit more. Currently it's up to nearly 90 mil, which is about a 30 mil increase over the last couple of months. The Dragon Hunter lance has also gone up a fair bit as well, increasing about 30% or so. Now besides that, your guess is as good as mine as to what weapons or armor are going to be useful here. Now my guess is generic PvM gear will go up, but there's going to be that one random kind of new item that will have a really niche use. And that's going to go up a ton. Who knows what that is, but it's probably a new item that doesn't have that many uses yet, and I'll be a complete dark horse. Now with Varlamore Part 2, we're also getting a pretty significant Herblore update, which I think is called Mixology. Now in anticipation of that update, some herbs are going up, but not all of them. Grammy Snapdragons have been trending upwards, Renar Weeds are trending upwards, but it might not be due to that update at all, just maybe there's an increased demand for prayer potions. Because most of the other herbs haven't really increased much. They peaked kind of more when the announcement was made, but they remained pretty flat otherwise. Avanto have actually gone down a fair bit. Quorms, kind of the same thing, was higher when the announcement was made. Catentines are going down, Toadflax are going down, and Dwarfweed are going down. Mostly I think this is because this is not going to be a meta way to train for main accounts, so this is mostly useful for Ironman, and Ironman don't affect the economy that much. This update's more about finding a more efficient way to use your existing herbs than it is more so the best active training method. And finally, for the first time in what feels like a few years, the bond has actually decreased a significant amount. We're only going back to early 2024 levels, but considering there's a new league announced and that's coming out at the end of the year, the fact that bonds have actually decreased a bit, kind of surprising, but a welcome surprise for those who are trying to maintain membership with a bond. Until recently, maintaining membership with a bond would cost you about $1 mil per day, and now it's down to an affordable 900k per day. So I don't think there's any expectation from me that bonds will decrease substantially. The currency of Old School is just going to continue to get more inflated over time. In the end, there's not too much we can do about it. I think in general, Old School has done a pretty good job of managing their economy compared to some MMOs or other games, but inflation seems to be inevitable. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.